Hello, everybody. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that so that you're not up too late tonight. We're going to do only 2 more presentations this evening. And we have plenty of time to do the remaining 4 presentations tomorrow. So what we are going to do is after those 2 presentations, there should be a bit of time to ask any of the groups that have presented this evening questions. So we're hoping that during that question center that we have an opportunity to get both comments and questions from the workshop participants. So be thinking ahead about questions and comments.
Jenny,
and with that, I think we are ready whenever you are.
Oh, se uscirà come do. Come ci faccio dice così.
Yala singyu no.
Oh, dai avuto.
Nasu.
Singde.
Oh, dai pege avuto.
아니 도마르들라는 디거 치뷰장배 아니 군주 넘버소다 안다가나시 아니 소가디나 페베 기dim바다 아니 시니기게 넘버소라 아니 니 루가니베게 구 삽슈네 아니 참말라 잉그루베 띵네 아니 터스틸리슈고스.
My greetings to everyone, including the special guests who have graced this occasion, as well as our teachers and others who have made this possible. My greetings, heartfelt greetings to everyone.
아니 디링 얘기 아니 담시시 주시디 아니 나슈기 니기 부젤라니 슈겐세 주시 디토네니 담시치.
Oh, here I'm here to relate our research regarding Buddhist teachings' impact on the quality of sleep.
아니 나주루가기 아니 주시 디 담고의 김제 있고 주시 디 담고의 김제디 가르스나 아니 다치다니 참에 켄세리 아니 장고로 미시긴 뒤따도니 갈로 양양한테 페디오리 아니 디리기세 뒤제들라 아니 낭바제 치와이나 안지게 드론 니짜집에 낭바치고레스 드론 니짜집에 낭바 세디 가르시고스나 아니 지게 몽데자 몽데 마인바 아니 지게 시엔이 대바토거디 개춤부레스 저 갈로 양양한테 펜디오레 텔라테네 나소기다 나쇼기 고동디 계지 강사디 약보지 시에서나 아니 강사디기 아니 루감리 당하는시 셈컴 아니 강사디기 니라니 슈기 TV 연나 섬에는 아주 제바치 주실레고데 딘더신스 슈이.
So the background reason for pursuing this research is, as everyone knows, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been very vocal for so long that making this call, a timely call to all of us to be 21st century Buddhists. And 21st century Buddhist, by his definition, is someone who is not just merely following the Buddha's path out of sheer mere faith, or rather blind faith, but rather grounding one's faith in an understanding, in the insights gained through reflection, study, meditation, whatnot, and thus, and that if we could do that, then not only we'll be able to go in pace with our time, but also have the aspired result of enhancing our well-being, physical, mental, as well as sleep quality.
다 주시 될라 때는 저와대 토마들라는 저와 가르치게 돼서는 아니 나중에 단일라 쇼긴 TV를 해다 말했어도 저와대는 토마디스 차대도스.
So with that background, our research question is, does knowing the teaching, that understanding the Buddhist teaching impact quality of sleep?
다 저와될라 때는 다 소샤지 최고라. 다 소샤된 가서 가르치했으나 아니 나중에 다 니라니 나중에 니라니 쇼긴 TV를 했는 소샤도 제요.
With that question in the background, we raise this hypothesis that yes, comprehending the meaning of the Buddhist teaching would have positive impact on the quality of sleep.
소샤 제디 아니 갑종기 아니 갑종 가르였으나 아니 안다 갑종 디리스 가서 타 타일랜드 아니 좀지지 뛰어나샤 좀지도 나는 가르코도스나 다 죽돔도 시와이나 좀지도 나로라 아니 낭추기 냠레 야부 체와이나 강사텔라니 류감데 다나시 셈감 강사티 니라니 슈긴 야부시 태고 도는 광지 좀지기 죽돔 난 도스퀘샤 아니 슈이
As per literature, as per sources for this, literature sources for this, for undertaking this research, we have found a resource from Thailand where the result of that research was that good grounding in the understanding of the Buddhist teachings and then internalizing them has big impact in enhancing well-being, both physical, mental, as well as sleep quality.
다 잡종데 두스 주바이 다 니바들 아니 아주 탈람세데 리도아 다 탈람 나랑 아주 가르치에서는 아니 당보들랑 아주 최다기 아니 루가직세 근데 니바들 아니 당진기 루가직세로 아니 파종원들 아니 다지기 루가니 두스 곱시 자셔요 다지기 루가 당진기 루가드나 아주 미추든지 두스 루샤요 아니 다지기 아니 루가드나 미니잡시 두스 루샤요.
So as per the method, we had divided up, we had two groups, one serving as the control and the other experimental. In the control group, we have, I think he said 17, but it shows 12, and then in the experimental 24.
네, 따지루 한다 당진루가는 미중니 된 아주 외디 세르메기 긴두마도 담샤요. 아니 따지루가는 민섭시주로 디에니 아주 따실로메기 긴두마도 담샤요.
Okay. Those who constituted the control group constituted of 12, so they are all from Sarame Monastery, and then the experimental group composed of 24 participants are all from Tashilumbu Monastery.
네, 아주 한다 당진루가 미중니주로 딜라 아주 아니 다 장고르무시기 아니 걸럽기 인동 인진요라 가짜 숨소루 지겨지기 아니 도스 콘솔라 도스 피샤요 대다 아니 바기 당진기 루가주라 당진기 루가 딜라 아는 아주기 장고르무시 걸럽 낭슈게 걸럽라레 디 가짜디 찍바지냐레 숨소루기 가자지 갑자 숨소루 좀 니가 찍바니 가자디 찍딜라 아니 한다 파종원 딜라 아니 따지 루가주라 딜라 아니 낭슈기 걸럽시 추종원 딜라 아니 낭슈다 마트베 지당이 걸럽요라 어디스 도스타샤요 슈
So both of these groups have been exposed to teachings by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, except the difference is to the experimental group, it was specifically on Buddhist teachings, and the other one was more wide secular topic.
대다 아니 나주기 당진기 루가다 따지기 루가 니요라 니가 나니 긴두바기 아니 낭슈기 니제 시제주라 디차샤바이나 시제 찬념로 차도 간스나 니가기 오마 따서기 강사 긴두바도 차대샤
We have made sure that that there was a balance, that there was a balance or a condition of equity between those who constituted the control group and the experimental group with regard to their Buddhist understanding, Buddhist studies level. Both of those groups had members who had just finished, equally just finished the Ummah, the middle way philosophy level class.
다다 예 겸거름식이 인진기 인동기 뒤즈딩아도 가자 숨소로 담요 뒤 담고 좀생 가르스나 아니 디렉에서 뒤즈디다 저기 다 투자 yar게 충분 편충부 차대 뒤즈 차대요라 잠물링 딘딘도 아니 담미 망치와 직도 셈 미바 지지글 내게니 뒤즈디니 네토에디 화장기 공부를 했어 디 임바 인상 아주 담이스 디 담게 디 담에 디양 잡종 가려졌으나 아니 한다 doctor 디 강로도 doctor doctor KR 수브라메니 게 코랑기 좀지 신낭샤 디낭로 가르 고도스나 아니 디리기제 잠링 게 디낭로 아니 추자 야게 친베 지조 디낭라 아니 강사 망치와 직 셈미벌 제지로 내디 투즈디 아니 가자 게 잠리샤스 가자 게 제라 아니 미ပတ်테토 문도스 코랑기 또 something no those questions.
For each of this group, the duration of the teaching that they were exposed to was a clip of 36 seconds long. The reason why we chose that is, of course, 36 seconds is not long, but we have based this on the findings of of a research led by Dr. K.R. Subramaniam, where they have found very significant evidence of shrinking attention of our era, and that there is a widespread attention deficiency. And because of that, to adequately catch the attention of the participants, we specifically chose that length of teaching, 36 seconds. In the research found by Dr. Subramaniam, the average attention span is 8 seconds.
디닝 안조다 당진 로가시 아니 당진 로가나는 지워 땅이 도 차송 디스 땡기 지워디 가리스나 지단 지워 숨 먼저 도 땅이 지워 숨난 지워 당보디 아니 견학이 아니 경고로 미시기 아니 까주디 된다 가지스 고소에는 지워 직세 지워 니워디 아니 견학 아니 건다 니람 땅 주에는 지워 직세 지워 숨보디 아니 견학 건다 니쿠여 가면 니 세와디를 총수에는 도 지워 디스 땅이.
And they were also provided with survey questions, and that questionnaire had 3 questions represented here. One dealing with how much of an understanding they had of the teaching they were exposed to, and whether they had a dream the last night after the teachings, maybe, and then whether they had disruptions in their sleep during the night.
아니 ngazu기 다 쿠란즈로 지원마던 걸 ngazu 쿠란즈로 아니 비교로 가르치시나 아니 한다 겸으로면시기 인지 년동디 아니 건다 야갈면 아니 시로시스네 비교직 쉬어 아니 대점도 마시 아니 겸으로면시 가주디 아니 경zo 나도디 인지민지 아니 삼나당로 시스네 두스 쉬어 비교.
So as for a precaution or rather a requirement to the participants, they have made a specific request to only listen to the teachings, their respective teachings, short time before going to sleep, and also make special efforts in comprehending the content of the teaching that they were exposed to.
다디 년동디 다디 당지 로가기 아니 겸으로 가주 년도리 디 가주디 아니 추다 마디리 아니 지단 예깔롭디리스 파종어디 아니 나도 깔롭 나도디.
This is the sample teaching clip that was exposed to the control group dealing with secular ethics.
Please.
They wanted it played. Come and do.
깔롭. The next. 좋습니다. 다 디젤 아니 좀되기 아니 디 들어가 디 하자 디센들이 아니 디 송신나게 디 아니 게 도지 로토스라 코나기 송신나게 아니 코나기 송시 라다기 통 낭도 어찌지나
They're now calling on King Lotus to deal with the result aspect of this research.
정말 디지털레라 아니 다 가장 두루왕이베 아니 난주기 니라 아니 니기 아니 부zel라 주겐 가서 메기 아니 가서 냠집전에 아니 다면 줍제디 아니 가네싱이 요래라네 아니 디지 쪽바체 당아조디 줍제디 디 가르첸라나 아니 티리고나 거여라 아니 티리나로나 아니 티리디 가레 라와이나 아니 나리기거나 거여라 티리나로 망보야체 아니 나리거나 거여스.
So I'm here to dwell on the outcome, the result of the research, and this is being presented in graph. Within graphs, there are bars and others, and here we are doing it through bar.
당아주기 둑디디 아니 티리나 아니 디자인이 수요와치 레스라 디자인이 디가레 라이나 아니 단다 인둥디 따네 아니 난든 디 아니 난든 디 가조 시여메당 아니 니람당 마당 지당 아니 니스마세당 아니 니람당 마당이 아니 디자인이 수요레스.
So in terms of the areas that they looked into and compared the results, they looked into one, the level of comprehension, and the other into the quality of sleep in terms of whether or not they had, for how long they could sleep, and then in terms of whether they had disruptions in between.
수주디 아니 다진루가 제와이나 아니 단다 아니 제딕디기 아니 난던데 가지고 숨어주지 아니 중딕디기 아니 미가 조여메디 띵오레스.
So this graph here, represented in bar, shows that there one area of the effect or the correlation dealing with the comprehension level plus the sleep quality. So of the two axes, as it is evident, the horizontal axis represents the level of understanding comprehension, and that of the vertical, the number of people participating in it.
단다디 순장 원보도시도 온디기 아니 일람땅 촌기레 아니 ngogardo 어디기 아니 가르라나 아니 일람마땅 촌기레스.
So of the two bars for each of the groups, for the two bars, the dark blue represents that they have slept, and then the lighter one represents they had not slept. Oh, no dreams. Sorry, dreams, no dreams.
아니 단다 디 아니 카르라이나 남도 가서 심마시 라 다디낭로라 아니 티와디 가서 타요레 아니 똑잠 고추와체 아니 딜레 라왕 고추와체 하장기 야보 고추에 니 대잔 수나요레스.
So on the horizontal level, on the horizontal axis representing the level of understanding and comprehension, they have kind of divided up in three groups, or one with little comprehension, somewhat in between, and then quite well.
아니 다진루가 나로라 아니 니람땅 직체 아니 온디기 아니 난돈 아니 똑잠마동 고추여 말레스 아니 난돈디 갈레강잠 고추겨 나로라 아니 니람땅디 아니 미니체 아니 니람마땅 미숨중요레스.
So this chart represents the finding on the two groups, control and experimental. On the left side of what we see represents the control group's results, where we see from among those who had very little understanding, there was no dream at all, or there was little level of dream, and then those who had somewhat in between level of understanding, they had both of those conditions represented there. and the number on the bars represent the number of participants represented there.
다 낭든 약보 빼하고 고추겐 될 나로나 아니 닐람 동안 아니 미시당 아니 닐람마 동안 미니 중요레스.
From among those who had very good level of understanding, 4 out of 6 participants, 4 had dreams, the other 2 no dreams.
니 다진루가 나마 게자 라파와이나 아니 게자 숨주 수준다 자 숨디 아니 낭돈 약보 고추와당 아니 닐람마 땅 요마레스.
So, kigare tangzin re takche re
다진라
takzin.
long control group.
Oh yeah. Okay. So in the control group, as represented below, they have shown the percentage. 33.3 of the participants who understood the speech well and had no dream.
아니 다 버조디 아니 게드나 아니 다제루가 나로라 아니 다 낭돈 고추바 아니 미니 토삼 아니 고추간 미니 요레 찍딜라 아니 닐람 타와탄 찍딜라 닐람 마타완 중요레스.
So the chart on the right side represents the findings on the experimental group. So you can see on the horizontal, the axis representing the level of comprehension from those who had very little understanding. Each group of who has dream and who has not is represented by 1 each.
아니 다 딜라 하오 고추겐 나로라 아니 밍하 딜라 아니 닐람 타메와치 밍이라 닐람 타 요레스.
And from those who had a slightly higher level of comprehension, you could see the variation in terms of whether they had dream or not in the ratio of 2 to 5.
아니 낭돈 약보 고추게디 나로라 아니 미게딜라 아니 닐람 마타와치 미투라 닐람 타 요레스.
For those who had the highest level of representing comprehension, those who had dream and no dream are represented in the bars accordingly, 6 to 8.
아니 디 게자라 바와이나 게자 아니 ngaptun gi ani nangtun ani peawo gochuwa dang ani ngilamma dawa ani tenyores.
So percentage wise of the 14 participants, 24 participants marve of the 14 participants, of the 24 participants, 14 of them fall in this category of who had highest level of comprehension yet had no dream.
아니 다 줍딩이 바디 아니 karlana 아니 ngisse masandang ngilam tang matangi ani naridi chayores.
So the second area we looked at in terms of the correlation was whether they had sleep disruptions in between and whether they had dream or not.
다 주진루가 찾아와 있나 아니 ngilam tawa matawa tang ani ngilam tawe ani design su eores.
So in this area again we looked at the conditions on both the control group and the experimental group. Looking at the control group on the left, we see those who had no dream represented on the horizontal bar. We had numbers represented there who had sleep disruption and not.
다 아니 ngilam matawa design nolola ani ngilam matawa kanshila ani ngimaseba sumche ani ngilam matawa kanjila ngiseba ani midangi juniores.
So in that control group, within the subset of those who had no dream, there was this distinction between who had sleep disruption and who didn't have. And so from among 5 participants, or 5 people who belong to that group of no dream, the variation is the ratio of 2 to 3.
아니 ngilam tawa kanjila ani ngiseba ani midang sumche ani ngilam tawa kanjila ani ngimaseba sumche ngiseba ani midanga juniores.
In that same control group, among those who had dream, Again, there was a distinction. There was a variation in terms of who had sleep disruption, which was 4, and then there's 3 hadn't any sleep disruption.
아니 계절 보이나 아니 계절 이슈자 아니 아니 닐라마당아치 아니 니마세와 주요레스.
So in terms of percentage from the control group, those who constituted the no dream as well as no wake up, no sleep disruption, constituted 25%.
다다제루가 나로라 쳐이나 아니 닐람당아 닐라마당아 나로나 아니 닐람 마당아 칸실라 아니 니스 아니 마세와 아니 미당 주체 아니 니세와디 미당아 주요레스.
So in the experimental group subjected to this teaching, you could see those who didn't have dream among them. Out of 15 participants, 15 who belonged to that group, 10 didn't have any sleep disruption. 5 had.
아니 닐람당아 칸실라 아니 니마세바 아니 미당 시체 아니 니세바 아니 미당아 주요레스.
And then in that experimental group, those who had dream, from among them, 5 did wake up in the middle of the night and 4 didn't.
아니 계절 보이나 아니 계절 시비자지당 책둑디 아니 니마세와당 아니 닐라마당 요마레스.
So in percentage wise, the condition of the experimental group was 41.6% of all the total participants in this group belong to that category of having no dream as well as no sleep disruption.
아니 데젤라 아니 죽돔디 아니 게리술 누불라기 아니 난기레 아니 겐라페로 나슈엔.
Now I'm inviting my colleague to do the conclusion.
당말라 참리주야다. 아니 당가저 루가기 아니 곤도 아니 단다 두데 텐서라다. 아니 가저 죽돔도 간지 개요라나 죽돔 아니 참바니 나와 아니 죽돔 아니 개이.
So when it comes to concluding from what we found that was represented in the previous slides, we are going to do the conclusion in 2 phases.
아니 당 참바니 가리나나 아니 장초기 아니 두베지 당데 토네 아니 간에 중규에 메디 토지다 니바딜라 아니 제만 간에 아니 여게 타야 당든저 간에 세고도디 콜레지 주이.
I see. He is going to do his concluding remarks by focusing on 2 aspects. One, on the positive results, discussing on the positive results from the research, and then the other dwelling on ways for improving in the future.
아니 장초기 아니 두베 콜라 간에 주인나나 단다 강도 아니 두베 아니 텐요라 디강나 맞지 아니 소자디 가리지나 아니 나초기 아니 고토야 보야 디 고축소나 아니 니게 아니 부갈아니 슈긴 택비레라니 투스 소자치여레.
So in terms of the positive results, we had the hypothesis that yes, being exposed to Buddhist teachings before sleep would definitely have a positive result, positive impact on the quality of sleep.
아니 대선상 아니 강들라 아니 두베나로라 아니 사바나지 아니 나초인 고도 가서야 아니 야 고소에나 아니 대체기 아니 니게 부세디 아니 야원도지 아니 땡겨를 간주나 간에슬레나 아니 간 나초인 고도 약부 고쪽에나 아니 살아 아니 니 마세와다 아니 닐라 마타와다 되네 아니 중요해래.
So in their research, they did what the finding they got also agreed with what they had the hypothesis on, and that they saw positive correlation between being exposed to the Buddhist teaching and the sleep quality. Because in terms of the sleep quality, they've seen how those who were exposed to Buddhist teaching before sleep had less sleep disruption or less waking up in the middle of the night and less dream.
아니 디다 아니 가저 단다 소자체와 디다 아니 두베지어라 디기 아주 소자체와 디라 아니 겹겹치게 두주이.
So yes, what they found in terms of the result of the research does support their hypothesis.
아니 디다 데자인이바 아니 당아조 야게 돈 지망아조 야게 돈조 거다 아니 데 톨아니 지 아니 주나 삼성.
And to dwell on how they could do better and what things they could bring in future if they are to do the research.
지당아도 통마들 아니 participation 아니 selection 라도 삼발랑아조 통마들랑아조 냠주 제 디나라 아니 아란조 디 게라 콘절라 아니 두스 주레 손자 게라 콘조기 코란조 양 냠주 나라 주도 삼발라 아니 코란조 냠주 디기 ngazo da ani dubde dilani kyon kyapsare samsamloji kanyujina pena gelana ba konzo khashiji ani covid ani desandinala du ani khashiji ani social media tani ninyao nyawo khashidu sonza digi shugendo tepsare samse ani gela konzo ngazo da dux skip jores.
Earlier we thought of inviting our research teachers on the site to take part in the research, but we found out that yes, many of them were already part of the other researches involving drinking coffee, exposed to social media, etc., etc. So we were really a little worried that that might intervene in our research. So we let go of that idea.
Ani this on the jela ngazo kita ani experimental group di gala ngazo danda ani experimental group dan control group gala danda imorigi danda ngazo jinda jiora it is a jinda do de gengi ani lomad konsola ani dus pa juere.
So in terms of the participants that they selected, it all solely fell on the student participants of the ETSI program.
Yeah, it is a loma di pa danda tasang khala yugyo ani sara megi ani danda tsarigi jinda do de ganda ani tashilumbula ani tsarigi jinda do de gen koronza pa sarwe din zo pulare.
Yes, the surveys were sent to ETSI participants who were located in Serame and Tashilumbu Monastery in two different locations.
And konzo dawaji ana konzo chazang mancha dawaji ani ETSI ki jinda lorim nipa tang sumba do de gen shata cha yore ani lo do chewana koranzo lo palje nijune sumchu baru de chagi yodu.
And in terms of their age group and their level of exposure to the ETSI program as well, there was some kind of a fair amount of equity, a fair amount of balance there, because just about all of the participants from both the two monasteries happened to be in the second or third year of the ETSI program, and age group wise, they all fell between 20 and 30.
Ani da dese nipa dawaji chawana ani additional question la tu samangazo danda survey nalola ani tiwa sumtsama mixa ki tayo mare.
So in terms of another area for improvement in the future is they needed to think about additional questions to be included in the survey, because the survey that they served only had 3 questions each. 3 questions.
Danda ngazo tiwa chidang ani danda nyamjuk chazang sosu lo kazo yeme tiwa taya dik ani dada de taya jumason di chegyo dojdu kain juna chidang lo chejungi ani nilayan shugen tepsi bare andi samidu.
So one of the questions they could have included but not appeared in the questionnaire was asking about their age group, because age group would definitely have a great impact on the quality of sleep, because sleep varies with age group. So that needed to be taken into consideration. We could have gained that information from asking this special question.
Ani tiwa ni baji kare tayo marla ngazo danda ni jopa ni sa tsane jala ani zupo ngaso yakbo teson temason la de ngazo tiwa tanya di jungmidu ani ni ki puse yakbo jungwala dine do tiwa tanya di gechembo jitongidu.
So since our research was looking into the sleep quality, we could have done better if we had included a question about how relaxed they felt after sleep, after waking up the next morning, but they hadn't included it. So that was a deficiency.
Ani the next step ani gomba jemaat kya la kanis chegodula na 다 바지 제와 나르다 아니 지당 가서 냠집 제디 단당 가서 구쇼 강아 경계 제로 아니 지마디 가서 아니 미기야 아니 낭주대 고도 도점에 미기 강아 제다 아니 미보랑 아니 파티시펜트 망삼 강아 제다 아니 디야 단대 차랑 가서기 니마치기 서베 차기요레 아니 제마 아니 니마 ngache chuche ani nima de donla ani Taiwan de chedo de nangjingi mibora mangzam ani tusa mangzam din juna ani yapo duksamido.
Another additional things where we could improve on in future researches like this would be to include more diversity in the participants, not just confine it to the monastics. Maybe rope in lay members who may lay members who could be exposed to these teachings, etc., and then make it part of the research, as well as expand on the number of participants, make it a little more wider, a bigger group. And then the duration of research, they only did it just for 1 day, I think, but it could be extended to 5 to 10, etc., like we have seen such research is done in other areas like Taiwan and others.
다른 더 소진 아니 아가sh 라말라니 투이체 주르체주에.
Now I'm calling on Akash Lamala to do the thank you part of it.
Touch to all. I first of all, on behalf of Ocean Group, would like to express our deepest gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama for this visionary project and opportunity given to us.
Nghe ta bude tu chi shue ki na lo la nghe ta bude chi no ko de kyang gi chu la ni ho de vet ne ni tu chi shue ni ta de ko ko de sang bo ra de khong gi tu chi ka di nya de la de des.
Also, we extend our sincere thanks to all the ETSI faculties and translator for your guidance on this beautiful journey of ETSI sustainability phase.
Jenny de ne da emer de pe tsering le rim ki cha shi sto be again la na ba so re de ne da ki ju na ba so re ani de yu na ba so kanga le je na ba kanga la tu chi shue yi ani ma ji ta ri dis chen ani shimju ki sapjong ki gyurim kaso du chi bil da pyo twe ta ti chi lam long ya ko shu yong de ji kanga na ba so cha je na ya ris.
We also would like to thank the participants in our group's study and fellow students for your insightful critics and remarks.
Tena ji ani kada sajong na nyam su na ge ki aro ko so re ani kana to kanga la yang ani nyam ru che be tu ne te ju ji ji lo ti te ya ta de to ne to su ko te de to la ani ji chi shuen.
Last but not the least, we take this opportunity to thank Devon Loseling Monastery about and the administrative member for the wonderful hospitality. Thank you.
Tene Devon Loseling ji care mu che u be ani le ne number tang tene tanda seri ka komdu ki tene kan ki le je number kanga la to je la me tu shuen ka re sna na bu se tu ju ro na tene ta ri chi ki sab jo tu se ko yu ti na ko shi chung so tu se.
We'll continue with the next presentation. The presentation Jumati. Group Shiva. Screen share Chishana. Screen share Chi. Can I call it the dust?
때 걸세우래 sabjong nyamshu nangking ki gi namba da geguro namba dagana shingi karseure debong losaling ki tanda tsering da gomdu tene kangi ti nangla nyamshu nangking ki gi namba da lobdon ba namba choro samalola ani tashtile shuyain.
At the outset, my greetings to everyone involved in this research workshop, including our beloved instructors, facilitators, participants, and everyone involved in making this possible.
Tine tanda di nganso gi ruka di karsi ure ta desen shiba sana min ruka shiba chade korwa ani ruka shiba gi ming dila ta nganso yak ruka sigi yore yak ruka
This is group 4, Yak group.
tine nganso yak ruka nanglo la ta chi lobdan ba kashi chi ta tine nganso nyamshu ba chi gen chi ta dompe midang dun su yu.
So this group is constituted of 7 participants, some serving as teachers, guides, and others participants.
Tine nganso digi tsangma ta nyamdu ya chi ki doju chen ni nganso ruka ki tsenjang di la jisok tagi nganso tsema upar gyuram say di ta nganso takshui che che ani karsi ure tsenjang di la di tsenjang sana mindu ni gojo di la di shawa yins.
So they are calling this research team, not calling this research team. They have called this research process by this title, or rather, this seems like their research question. Does social media exposure to social media transform us into night owls?
Di shawa be chidang ta gobo kimsen kashe ji yura ta di dordu di shuba ina. Tanda di kajang di tsenju di tongwa zamgi ani karsi ure mangbu chik di nang la chowa dang gawa dang di to la yam tsenbu ki to ne di la karsi ure nyamshu gang mang jaya chik dang di to la ani karsi ure donang jaya ki chedu nganzu tsenjang di chik chedu karsi ukpa la tanda pe char che shaya di kimsen di is.
So why we chose this? Why we chose to call our research question in this way? Why we chose this way of expressing it is to grab the attention of listeners and others who would be exposed to this research, as well as to have some kind of a dramatic effect on those who see this, to kind of make them think twice in terms of what this might imply, etc. This one, nale.
Dine tang anso tanda di nanglo la karsi ure karchak da maso na karchak druk se atam yo di kan se na chidang anso nangpe lobnir chigen zure chidang gi ani karsi ure karchak di dang anso di gechim bu shugo chi tsigi yores di insang karchak druk se ya subject da maso na subject druk se atam yos.
So they have resorted to this traditional, very typical traditional Tibetan way of going about laying out a presentation, laying out a text or a plan, literary plan. They are so used to having table of contents. So now this is our table of contents. So how we are going to proceed through this?
Kai se na karchak da subject di thongwa zamgi chidang gi chi karsi ure chigo ki shungdi kashi ki rigwa yaga zo ki gowa lon togo yores.
And there is a significance behind having such a condensed yet comprehensive table of content at the very beginning, outline at the very beginning, because those who are with sharp faculty, they could judge by mere seeing the table of contents could have significance, kind of a working understanding of what they can expect and what their work is dwelling on.
Di dangbo di gyabzhong di shugu gechim buchi re, kai se na ani gyabzhong di meba ina di tenjue dang shimju kanri ina chik tsenden yong dang ma yong ki dati keba zula zoba dang nyong dang mangbo yong yores. Di insang gyabzhong di shagwe di gechim buchi jine gyabzhong di shayos.
And the list is initiated. List begins with background. A background kind of is the contextual background, and it puts everything in context. This is very significant in going about any way of any form of presentation and whatnot. To have the listeners with you, it would be good to kind of give the bigger picture, which kind of puts everything in perspective and context.
Iba dila tablam di dang anso karse ure chidang 심죽 제기위원회 가르치기위원회 내가 간대치 제바이는 고 탑람디 고야디 고 게지무차 되기 요로 탑람디 나란수 갈색으로 빼나 강배 나로를 주의기 권자기 디믹이 최저고 차되기 요레스.
And the next is method. Method is very essential. It's kind of a methodical way of approaching anything, systematic way of approaching anything. If we take the case of entering into some house or whatnot, having the key, right key, and kind of going about applying it would constitute part of the method.
dumde tablamlan tembe ani garso gure dumde 강임이다 아니 죽돔디 나로라 아니 가란소 강기 되게 조사와 되게 독도지마 아니 롭지마 고치샤요 디네 마옹 레자 나로라 간조 마옹 벌레직 탑람 간데스 제고 위험에 부이다로 간데스 땅고 위험에 곰바 간데스 보고 위험에 디체 디네 간조 두제 렉소 나로르다 garso gure 디 garso gure 로버징에 참말로 가딘체다 아니 garso 가딘 되게 두제 렉소 지슈기요.
Then obviously result part deals with the summary of what they found, and then skipping the next one to the future plan, kind of coming up with how they could grow from their experience and improve in their future, what needs to be included, what needs to be redone differently, etc. And then the last one is acknowledging it. The part is acknowledging the impact and the benefits they gained from others.
토마텔라 참말라 아니 감지 삼드시고요스 아니 대내는 모두 지에데 아니 맞춘 냠집 그 아니 가서 잡종대 인스 다 냠집 그 잡종대 가서 다나 가서 저소지 군고다 아니 냠집지 캔덴스에게 돈이 아니 가서 망고 주지 인스.
So my role is to present the research background, and this I'm going to do by approaching the societal relevance and significance of the research in question.
Ini ngazu da karsori jesoji gunkoda ani nyamjeji kenese te ngazu ani lusim chotin da ani da lobjon la nuchun ani litun tushirsi ani da chambasum goni ngazu ngotu jege chaji yos.
So this topic of societal relevance and significance of the research, they are going to approach it by looking at the mental and physical health impacts, as well as the impacts on learning skills, and then how that results in unproductive work outcome.
Yenita ditsensum go tambo ta lusim chudin ji ko na pena cha shawa na ani cheso traji chinji ani samo soso ta karso de supolan dangin ji ani nichi khu matba yana ani ti chinji karso de ngachu ani lula ngartam jo ta ani simla cha shawa na tamba masawa ta o dindige ani chuncha mo jin jong yores.
So social media is something that we need to be handling in a balanced way, because if there is an excessive exposure to it, particularly leading to kind of looking or watching through it late into night, that could cause sleep loss, and that can have an effect on our physical health, and that could affect the other capabilities of ours, such as weakening our memory, etc., etc.
Any da lobjon la nochin do tang dina da karsore cheso traji chenji samo so ni dangi ji ni ji makuba ina ani lobjon la da tosim chimbo tangdo chimbo ani lobjon la jig chang karsine sim masabi ngani ji ani karso lobjon ge ji lobjon thola nuya thoma thaba ani tende ge chunchen jong ge res.
And in terms of its impact on learning skills and things related to learning, excessive exposure to social media can deprive our sleep, and that can make us kind of lousy the next day and less active, etc., and thus will not be able to ramp up our enthusiasm in the skill in the learning processes, etc., and that's how it will affect our learning skill as well as learning outcomes.
다나 저거 가르세는 니 사모소소 니 당이지 니지 그 마트바이나 아니 다 소소 미치는 거 아니 가르소래 리도 맘보지 투시는 거 요레스 베나 차샤바이나 아니 사모소 니 당이지 마키바이나 아니 다 룰랑 아르톤 종아다 심 마사와 아니 샤와라 리톤란 직 아니 가르선 직심 종 마타바 가스 시그나야 가르소래 아니 소소라 가르시기다 아니 어떤지 좀 어떻게 진짜 뭐 정도였어.
Again, this kind of a social media exposure can affect our work quality as well as productivity of it. In that that could have the impact of dulling our mind and make us less enthusiastic, less active, etc. And that could all have impact on the quality of work that we engage in and the results thereof.
Deni da tangsang tu dene jila nga suji chechok karsore damchi chichi tabi kam dene jila ni da najun tu chona lapar da najun tu chona ani ka nintang ninga khalan sai shan ni tinde ni damchim pichu tang no mopo jiri ina khonso ko tinde la ni tinde damchim pichu tang la tene sosu ani lusim ni chala shu nuchin sapchi mon rogo yore ina ani tinde ga nuchin rogo ya ti ngusing ya mare tinde ani kare nguseng cheta nga su di nyamji de dam ni ka cheta nyamji ko joshan de dam go ya de ani jimsan tinde kang ge yins.
So very often this sleep deprivation due to social media exposure in an excessive level affects mostly the younger generation, and very often they are kind of steeped into it so much that they do not realize what they are getting into, and that's the reason why to create awareness to this and bring attention to this, they were inspired to do this research.
Deni karsoda sarik toni nyabje japtin do jishena ari sarik bakashigi ani karsori khapar ke damchin piljo tonga teda ani nijin chuchon kola ani india yume ke tendi ani jimjik ji shas ani jimjik tin nalola ani ari nalo ni junchi ani chigton denja jachi chepje chig nyamjik ji shas nyamjik ji ne ani khonso ke tangto doji tendi ke jimjik ke tupton tela 아니 카파가 담춘다 던차데리나 아니 담춘 망바 아니 망보 피주 땅칸 텐데라 아니 고 카르테는 이진 특좀 망한 정화가 텐데게 접던이 샤스.
So as for resource background for this research, we found people in the West undertaking research in this area, and had found and had undertaken the research for over on 1,788 participants, young participants, and they have found how that indeed was the case of how exposure to social media, particularly engaging in social media texting, etc. Datin, he's using the term datin here, information. So maybe mobile phone usage, excessive usage, and exposure to the social media through that is having an adverse effect on their sleep quality.
아니 다 나추 토니 지 잡텐 더 주셔야나 나추 그 손이 다 니테 가서 니 lunkham 소식 그 지가 좀 주주 송요레스.
So in terms of background information from the Buddhist point of view, sleep is considered among one of those indispensable sustenance for bodily health.
되니 땅가수 냠집 그 형본도 지나 형본도 주셔야나 땅가수 다 아니 냠집 그 좋아대 저소 자지 아니 니란 고친 시스템 세팅 가수 냠집 그 좋아인스.
So in terms of certain features of their research, when it comes to the question of the research, it is, does social media negatively impact on our sleep?
되니 가수 냠집 그 아니 소자대 아니 저소 자지 니란 고친 탭지 요스야 된 가수 아니 냠집 그 아니 소자대 인스.
And their hypothesis with which they began was that yes, social media does have a negative impact on sleep.
되니 가수다 가수들 아니 소자대 돈라 니면 된 가수 아니 가르세나 탑란 간리 토니 아니 디오레스나 아니 가수 단다 아니 모세 심지기 당 장세 심지기 당 딱시 무시 아니 삼반만다 숨고 토니 가수 아니 가르세 딱시 지오레스.
So in terms of pursuing the research, they did this both in the qualitative sense as well as qualitative sense, and also by engaging in experiments.
되니 디노니 다 딱시 문로지나 가수 아니 rakhanala 아니 rakhanang다 rakcha구지니 아니 숨때 아니 니 아니 마냥올라 카바 비주 마당지 숨때 카바 당지니 아니 카바데 비주 당지니 아니 가수 가지나 아니 딱시 문데 지요레스.
In terms of undertaking the actual experiment, they did this on their own group members, dividing up into 2 groups of 3 each, and each so the respective groups were either led to be exposed to the social media before sleep, or they were kept away from that.
Any ngazu takseng muji jerum nolonida. Ani chesoji tarja peche shibate ngazu ani kare tumi jinji chuti shayos. Ani karseta rakani ge nichi pucha jiora te ngazu ani tuchi jinji kash ani tuchi jinji chuti shayos.
So in terms of the variables, they identified exposure to social media as their independent variable and their sleep quality as their dependent variable.
Ijini tablam jibate ani ane chiyolali ani ngotu nangares.
So more on research will be following.
Good morning and good evening to all. So prove our hypothesis, we used 3 scientific methods. Quantitative study. So these are quantitative study and qualitative research and experimental study. So for the quantitative study, we created 9 survey questions and sent them randomly to our some nuns and monks friends.
Any board said that they any counter to Yagi Shinju did not any the Chisho Chiva you taking the day and Shipshake Chiva Kuyu taking Shipshake Jessica company. Here and come down the and comes at the Tambune to Mota Sinja didn't share my companies.
We collected the data from 57 participants and analyzed them, and the detail will be shown in our graph.
Jenny, any Shipshake comes at the any Ungaming companies and comes at the Trentomni meaning of Junga Duna Jump Chasos, and it did the Yogi to do carry immediately Narita, Nari Tonet, Tengis.
Next. So to validate the quantitative survey, we created a qualitative survey continuing with 4 questions and sent them to the same subject of quantitative study.
Then the board said that the any tongue to do Cheshire, and set of Tata Jet, Yeship Jet, and Dala, and he took at the Jerry, any Shimjuki, letting Chikamay, they can win a roller, and he took at the Yugi to a she comes a day, and Tome, any meaning of Junapitara and Chipol companies.
The data we collected from 57 subjects and analyzed and also this interpreted in graph.
Then in Dushan and Tanto Dushabate and Tanto Tuesday any Yamshuba Sokorwata and the Tivat Tansa meaning of Junapin Tans and the any Nangseki Tanto Karira with the Yeship Tone, name Tanda Nari Narita, Nari come tendency years.
So for the experimental study, we have 6 subjects from our YAG group.
Tajiki Shimju Jedela, the Gichi any Borseta, any piece that Taji Mushi Shimju Cheta Chesadela. Shimju Chesadi, Kunazurangi, Ya, Rupagi, Mina Tukudeis.
So 3 of us participated in the experimental study. group, and 3 of us participated in the control group.
Any minute who you would be any summer graduate, any chick, tajik, rugache, chick, any cheese in rugache and service.
For 5 days, the experimental group used social media before going to bed, and yeah, can I be given
Oh.
the game?
So they undertook the research, or rather so they undertook the study for 5 days. For 5 days.
Those who in the control group did not use social media before going to bed.
Oh yes. Jenny, any tanda taji rukata, any tangzi rukaya, season se rukai, any no taji rukadela, any nimanga ringa, nimaku konde, any jido raja, nebat kajuris.
We requested them to list the data of when they sleep, wake up time, and the sleep quality for each day.
Jenny, any taji ruka konatola, ngaya dela, any ni kadu koimba, ni gyuring the kadu kosong, any ni buka ni chiki jamlu kadu kosong, kesu is minji any. And the Shipshegi Ganalola, Ganoches Salavius, Togoches Lavius.
We collected all the data at the end of the 5th day, and I hope and analyze, and I hope the detail you will find in our result.
Then Nimangaba, send Nimangaba, and it can go to Divi, and it is Yeship Cherokee, and to think at somebody, and it to the Nemate and say English.
So which will present by whenever love son.
Okay, whenever love son. Genosan like that today, Genosan like English.
Tanda the yes, the any gangi that tablam the jubi that tunde the shayro and tunde the nano and the borze simju tunde jita, any Tana shingi, and pizze simju tunde and taje simju tunde sumuton shay.
So my role is to present the result based on the methods that we that we applied, and I'll be doing that by approaching on 3 fronts: one, the quantitative result, in the qualitative result, and the experimental result.
Then the Thoma then Borzegi Shimju Tunde Nazuta di Chidizamba, Nazuta Thoma and Tivajita Pure about that Tanda Duru Chele. Tivadi Nanola Karet, Tivatamba the Karikuresna, and Mania Kong choosing Nansula and the Chizo Tajapechevana, Kirang Nil Shuki, searching them say, then Nil Gojin Sura, Gojin searching say, the Tivaj Pure, and Tivadi Pidizamba and Nazul Land the guitar Tunde with Karayosna, and Gojin Surgeon said. And Jaja Dunju Tunsunche, and Gojun Majun Sedi, and Jajan Nishapji, Tatu Chadesha.
So, in terms of the qualitative result, what they included among the questions in the survey, one was about whether exposure to social media within 1 hour of sleep time, did that have adverse effect on your going to sleep, on your going into sleep, and the respondent amounted to 73 of them saying yes. 73%. Sorry, no conda. All of them. Conda.
The Gojan Surveyina and Gojan said the any Dindrachi Nanola and Tima Kazuchun said, that Tivadia is color the mixed culture that the tiny the things of Danja and Tivaji, that Tivadi Nanole and Anzul to the land, Tandu Nanola Karase or Sivana, and Tambodeli Nanola and Anzul Zawani in Majun Sage, Tima Zawani in Majun Sage, Tambajiche, and Nivatili and Dindrachi Nano, Tima Chichun Sage, that Tima Chichun said in Nanola and Jaja Dunju, Hasojani, Tima Chichun Sonse, and Jajan Shuzima, Chumason Sage, and Tima Nivati Nanola and Karatungersna, and Jaja Tuju Hasojin Chunson Sita, and Nil Tima Nil that Ni Chunson Singedi, and Jajan
딘주 두줄 하서 자기도 아니 야자 십주 쓰지 디차데도 안 팅다 딜 마와 팅마 숨 사선 중선 세지 그러라 다디 인바이나 안 야자다 딘주 학서 차데도 아니 야자 두주 야자 이슈 학서지 아니 중마선 세디 차데도.
So in a follow-up question, they also asked the frequency of such adverse effect on their dream, on their sleep, in terms of feeling difficulty going to sleep. How frequent it was in a period of 7 days, and that's what the graph is showing here in terms of percentage. Saying not at all percentage. He said, I think those who had one time 70, so 2 times 60%, and then the more than that 70%, something like that.
디가 가서는 다 지도 타자 표지 제바 디게 휴경의 땐제 아니 뒤도도 니마도디 안 디세가 차도스.
So what this makes clear, what this brings to the surface, what this brings to our attention is that usage of social media before sleep really slows down how fast you could go into sleep.
디네다 팅 딘라지 나노 팅마 따지 니 숨 디네 하게 요바이나 다 하에디 아니야 다 윤제도디 팅마 레레 나노다 윤제 가져지 하요세 다 뒤도 니마도다 니 쿠마도 하에 윤제 가져 라송세 먼저 뒤바지 필요하래.
And then, yes, as said earlier, so maybe the previous was dealing with reflecting the question of whether or not they face adverse effect in their sleep quality if they are exposed to social media 1 hour within 1 hour before sleep. And then the second was how frequent they had this problem in a period of 7 days, and this is what is represented here.
다 팅만 레레 나노라 아니 다 추제 karma 찍네 추제 제가 내 추제 아니 까마 두주 아니 추제 찍네 추제 제가 아니 추제 찍다 제가를 마 니네 컨데스 클래스 라 윤제디 아니 아들다 라야디 당도 나노라 아니 베나다 추제 karma 찍네 추제 제가 받을 라선 생데 야자디 베 세토레샤 안 디네 다 니바디 아니 가르스나 추제 제가 내 추제 까마 두주 파라딜 라야데 야자 토차 되기도 아니 디네 아니 추제 찍다 제가 찍네 찍다 제가 받을 라선 송에디 아니 야자 디날 야자다 두주지 차 되기도 디네 딜 마와 라선 송에디다 니 쿠마도 라선 송에디 아니 추제 숨 시디레 차 되기도.
And this graph reflects how long did it take for them to go to sleep after being exposed to social media. So the percentage of people who remained awake from between 1 hour to 1.5 hours was quite significant, and then likewise was in the group of 30 to 60 minutes, quite high. And then there were others who could not sleep at all. That means for hours together, they kind of kept awake. So that was quite alarming. So that's what they found.
디 나노래 아니 간저기 단다 디 두레디 가르 두르여레세 바이나 아니 단니 다 마구발 하야죠라 다 지도 다저 베저 제제니 마구발 하야기 디기 디가 하야디다 아니 디 단다 디 셴바지다 가르 여레세 점바 아니 단다 응보디기 아니 디다 할라 인제니 디니 파라 두르체 아니 간저리다 타마델다 둔제 가르라여레세 바이나 아니 다 지도 다저 베저 제바디 고진 망아서고 바디 아니 간저디 레디 두던 거레스.
So in the bar, the red color represents those who said yes to the question of the social media negatively impacting on their sleep and how it made them go to sleep much later or slower with difficulty. And then the blue color represents those who said who answered negative to the same question. So from the range of the colors in each bar, you could see how the negative impact is very significant.
tanda gana da burje shimju tanda ngajo da thunje dile ani sum rayor da digi khare ngajol te arisna ani jizo treja pheje cheba digi da ani ngilo gojin suga yoba de ten yor da di mayimbe ani dil tablang sta gyujen shamba yomeji da manye kon jizo treja pheje cheje an dili da mayimbe gi da di kon le ya ani da gyujen shamba yome ngajo gi da shimju de bize shimju ton jigdo yore.
So through the means of qualitative research, a qualitative analysis, or qualitative method, what they were eager to figure out was whether the difficulty to sleep, what slowed them in going to bed, in going to sleep, had solely to do with the exposure to social media, or was there any other variables that could be interfering in this? That's what they looked into that.
Danda ganzo bize shimju drogoye di karsina ani jizo taje tsam ngayimbe dile shimbe yujin seje du chayo ndi ta ganzo bize shimju di nano le karish shayo resna ani ganzo tiwa kashi pyo reda pena manye kongle ani dinde gita chuzu jing nano le ya ani sikjala soba dinde tung yube se da ani namjing tudo nye di ngole ya ngale da ngondo nye imbe se dinde gita tiwa dinde pyo re de pyo pyo ndin ba ani ganzo 장도 가르라요 resna 아니 만약에 공기 취수직 나절에는 직자들서 바동메스 아니 딘데 ngawa dinde ke nyemese ngazulita 장도들아요 디 나놀다 자자 dunju 지금 안 나서 디 동해다 아니 ngawa nyemese 디 장도디 티리디 땡도스.
So they undertook this qualitative analysis, qualitative research, where they were looking into whether some other factors might be involved in how they were feeling the impact after having been exposed to social media, and into the possible potential causes for difficulty to sleep. They chose whether they had consumed caffeinated coffee or any other caffeinated drink before going to sleep during the time on the night when they were exposed to social media. And also they looked into whether or not the research analysis during the research period when they went to sleep, was that not the usual time when they would go to bed or not. So in their research, that was to kind of see into the qualitative nature of their sleep, and they found that they were very consistent with what they found in the previous quantitative research, in that none of these interventions seem to have been a possible factor in affecting their situation, because over 70% said that they weren't exposed to any of these extra possible potential factors.
tanda di nganzo bize simju tumje di ani nganzo tanda borje simju tumje di ani da takta degi yobachi da digi karsna ani manya kong chuzu jing nangzo jido taja peje cheba digi nila gojin sugu yoba di nganzo toman sosha cheba nansing gojin sugu yoba di ani bize simju digi takdir chigu yobachi di segi dus.
Resorting to the qualitative method in checking against any possible interventions were not. That finding was very helpful in reaffirming what they found in the quantitative analysis, quantitative study, because none of the other possible interventions were a factor at all, and thus it affirmed that what they had as hypothesis to begin with was true, in that social media exposure to an extensive level definitely adversely affects the quality of sleep and the time, how fast you could go into sleep.
디지랑 당한저 따제기 심주치요 따제 심주디 나노 가저 당진 루가다 아니 따제 루가서 니체 안데 니보디 나노라 아니 당진 루가 디게 아니 다 커버 표좀 다 지도 타제 표좀 마체다 아니 녜체 아니 심바디게 아니 다 남지 나시 녜체 디즈마 당한저 다 루가 소소소소 니망강을 다 지왔다 다 지왔디 가르스나 다 네번에 말랑파르게 윤제디 추즈 가서 유명이 디 윤제디 때요 다 윤제디 나노래 아니 다 장도 소소소소 여바디 디 다 티그리 땡게 요체 안 장도 타마들 아니 가르스나 윤제 땅지 루가다 아니 따제 루가니 소소소소기 아니 찬용기 가려 유명디 니니 때인체 아니 니니 추 누르 온디 좀바 안 장도 니디 아니 딱다지 직바차 되기도 다 직바차 내디 가서는 가족이 단다 따제 따제 제대기 캡제도 충분하니 장도리 직바차 되ವೆ 딱 개시페나 아니 따제다 당진이기 단다 빠라르기 아니 캡제도 치르 당바 임바이나 아니 가족이 단다 중제디 아니 지도 타제 베제 제바디기 니를 고지 쓰기 여바디 아니 다 세기 여바디 가족이 다 저바치기 예스 어디지.
So in terms of the experimental study, as mentioned before, they divided up their own group into two, constituted of 3 each, and that's how one served as the control group and the other, the experimental group for a period of duration of 5 days, and that's how they collected the data or not. When they looked at the average of sleep duration, the amount of hours they could get sleep in the two groups, the average seemed to be the same. And they wonder if that had to do with the size of the experiment, the size of the experiment group. It was very, very small, very minimal. And so if this could be expanded and made wider, they were hoping that the difference would have been more starkly clear, and the average coming to the squaring up to the same thing would not have been the case.
다 단단 아주 다 돌디바이나 아주 다 토마스 샤디 가르쳤네 지도 저제 저와 되게 니를 고진 수요 그래서 디체와 시중 아주 단단 아주 중재대 가르라요 그래서 바이나 아니 지도 저제 베제 체바 니를 고진 수요 바디 아니 아주 중재대 주니 아니 도스 총선스 디시.
So on the whole, as they had their hypothesis saying that yes, exposure to social media would have an adverse effect on the quality of sleep. On the whole, the combination of the results kind of point in the same in that same direction.
아니시면 갤로산 제조디스 제소지.
아고니 아니 시바노진 간주 아니 딱지르 코니 카르지올라나 고니 그니 디 아니 머치 심지도 피치 심지 아니 딱시 심지 아니 심지고 노니 아니 가주 초작들라 아니 머치 심지도 피치 심지니게 아니 잡주지요레스.
So as you have heard, we embarked on this research with the hypothesis that yes, exposure to social media would have an adverse impact on the quality of sleep. And among the methods that we chose, that we applied, the qualitative and the quantitative study methods both supported our hypothesis.
네, 다 심지 아니 심지 아니 점증우 시바갑서 아니 간서 아니 다피 머치 심지도 피치 심지 아니 다시 심지 시스템분이 아니 간서 조작되라 아니 다 피치 심지도 아니 머치 심지니기 아니 잡주치 아니 다시 심지가 아니 대점 잡주치요 말레스.
So from among the 3 study methods, the experimental study method didn't support, at least at this level of the participants sample, it didn't explicitly support our hypothesis.
얘네 아니 다시 점직디 아니 간수 아니 다 recono 아니 다시 줄면서 염염부친지 아니 다 정토 녀와도 아니 비치디 점요 정토 녀와도 정토 쳔비 인저스 삼겨레스.
And we think that the lapse, or rather the inconsistency with the experimental study method might have to do with the sample, the size of the sample of the experiment, which was just 3 people each in the groups.
아니 다마오 리차노아 아니 간지 심지가 트와칼라 아니 다 지금 논비 간지 적고메도 티카니 랭고아도 아니 페르나 간지 아니 심지가 값스 트와톤디나 아니 nga라 간술라 아니 천서다제가 아니 닐랑가체 조그레 진이 트와톤르티 아니 텔레로스 간지 아니 다 아니 남진 주지 아니 천서다제 베셔 통기요 틴디지 트와톤 요르마레스.
So from this research experiment, what they have gained in terms of experiences or not, they have found areas where they could do better in their future endeavors. That could include how they would formulate the questions. In the survey, they started off with asking whether exposure to social media had adverse impact on the quality of sleep. They didn't ask, they didn't precede that. With asking whether or not they are using social media at all. That could have been included, and that could have made a big difference in how people responded to those questions in the first place.
트로트 드럼도 아니 다 제체도 준대 아니 쪼쪼 아니 만주 다 딱시 점직딜라 아니 다 트로트 드럼 아니 데 아니 자체지다 딜라요 아니 만지 섭삭스 동지다 어디코라 아니 시크여르츠.
Also, we could have done better in our data collection method as well as the sample size, because from the experimental study, it was quite clear how the average kind of came to the same and might have to do with the sample size, etc. So data collection method could have been improved and refined further.
Tani jelan tatsato ani sotumbi ani lamtos jindigoni ani zo nganzo ani shimjik ani 다 조제til라 아니 제라 아니 지 간드노지도 아니 로톰발라 아니 람톰 가리요미 어디콜라니 기지오른 저란로 똥고요레스.
And with regard to the topic on discussion, seeking help from the experts, yes, they could have done better in availing of any possible available expertise around, and that's definitely an area to look into and avail of more.
Tani tigji lasulani ta konsa jaram buchi chadani emarada wichi pinzu emarada wichi tsering jinchunga ni lirum ga lishi payong ni sushi wa tan tanchi jorke namdo ni nyamshimpi ni lopton bado kijirwa ani nyamshikpi ni gegyan don sancho ani njepong losaling tsering lishi paton ani mashi jiwe ani ta tsomala ani tigji chichigayo tigji.
Last but not the least, in terms of acknowledgement, I want to extend gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and also my thankfulness to all who were involved in it, including, of course, our instructors, translators, facilitators, everyone involved in making this a wonderful journey for all of us.
Those were absolutely wonderful presentations, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say we're just really deeply moved by how much work you put into them and how much care you provided to your presentations, and just what a great job you did. And it gives me so much hope and excitement for this next phase of ETSI as we transition into doing research together, in addition to also learning research together and science together.
Ano kodo ting sabu tayo dili to the dulam sambu shida du sene ani toki dos.
We're a bit over time, so we want to make sure you can get to bed and be ready for our presentations tomorrow morning.
Tang du juju tele gesa jas and juju gesa du tene number so that kungye so ko chagi ore inza dari konda kungye abo se to ne yan sani tamse na ngenso ani ya daga na shin che ani na to ya yes.
We'll have only 4 presentations tomorrow. So our thought and our hope is that we'll actually have some time for questions tomorrow that people can ask any of the groups questions at the end. And so we'll probably hold off on questions right now so you can go to bed.
Sani sobi ni janiga tombe juju satari yobani hichigwa ina yan tamse nange ruwa shiba to me sani ngadu chen tombe ani 주고 주주 가나가서 하지 대 주고 질린 제약이 주주 하게 상고도 이제 담아 단단 나버스 아니 누가 나온 편지다 누가 담담시나게 수인나샤가 되도나 대도단데 여기 지와다 공사로 거리에 되고가 단단에 아니 저기 나야다 야부시 야지 나야다 아니 상이 가서 관계되는 곳은 공부하러 오시고요.
So I have us starting with group 3 tomorrow, the Laughing Buddha, or as they refer to themselves on the first day, the cool guys.
Sani ngaji tamche nange ruga sumbaibata nabasu Laughing Buddha seni Laughing Buddha ki ruga teres te Laughing Buddha seni ani nabasu rangi inai ngote cheve kala cool guys that's
I just have one closing thought, which is one of the many things I loved about your presentations is that on the closing slide, you always had kind of a future directions section and things that you learned about doing research from your current study.
아니 마 던데비 타만타만데 아니 단대기 냠용실에 샤베토네 마음버 간데지기 마음버 가져 간데지기 마음버 야게 간데상이 있으니 던데지기 던데지게 봐도 상대샤티 가장기 아니 야보다 아니 페미스비 계신부지데 인디기 마음버 가소레 둘람타 디톨파 상초기 요알레부터 도야기 레바타 아니 남가 차기요리스.
And that really reflects the spirit of science, which is there's never a perfect study. We're always learning, and we always get to do more research and learn from our current research.
삼도당단보다 아니 삼도 개수도보다 다리였나 다리 제샤브네 제샤브데 다 타마레 다 타게 죽지브레 디 악쇼에 들려야 다 여마르스킨 빈상게 여마르스 다리 제샤브디 다 더동 탄도 주샤브데 더동 들려야 야게 타에 더동 들려야 주바 타에 민다버체 여르스네 삼도들지 그뒤에 삼도 갑자기 키디그레스 디 아니 나버제 단다 신주 비샤와 주보다 님도 뭐게 와 공사된데 예브디기 더동이 야타에 예브지기 공사 정규에서 디 아니 단도 제대하기 세리기 자샤 됐던 팀에 세리기 semkam다 세리기 sem기 계속이 딱딱 전투기여서 때문에 계속이스.
The last thing I'd like to give a special thanks to the graduate science teachers because it's clear just how wonderful they've been working with you on the ground and really making these wonderful presentations. So thanks to the graduate science teachers.
다른 그거 비슷한데 믹스기 아니 나버도 파게산에 사도를 유대경기 아니 세리 게라 나버서라 믹스에 구지시 주인스 나버서기 파게 차시에 렘부터 코나즈니 담세나에다 그게 나올라 아니 직기 상부슈게 인터뷰에 시랑 무슨 때부터 아니 때미스베 아니 내가 친구도 계신분이 때미세 그 단다 담진체제 규제 담진체제 그렇지 주인스.
So I hope you have a good sleep. We've talked a lot about sleep. We'll see how presenting research affects sleep, but I hope you have a great sleep and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow and continuing the conversation.
이제 심조부 용어를 와요. 아주 심주 많지 심조부 코 도마코도 되고래. 하나 벌써 개돌이 빌려만 차이래 심조 된데랑 쿠그레 쿠그레스 대다 자지 다 참샤기